Today we're calling bullshit on the belief that you need to be one thing in order to be a successful creative entrepreneur. If you've ever told yourself that you need to niche down, pick a label, pick a medium, then this episode's for you, because it ain't true.
I can taste your words. I can taste your I can taste your words.
I want you to listen into a conversation that I had with Celina Bailey, who is a super talented photographer, graphic designer, blogger, Pinterest influencer, visual artist, art director, like you name it, she's done it. And what I found so inspiring about her story is the fact that it is not like, it's like it goes all over the place. She's super nonlinear in the way that she thinks and talks and approaches life. And her journey from when she was a kid to where she is now is very squirrely, right? What better way to put it? Squirrely in that she followed her curiosity and her curiosity led her to work. And this whole episode is about how to build and how to create a creative life that stretches beyond limits. Because the one thing I want you to take away from this conversation is that if you follow your curiosity, the work will come. And that you don't have to stick yourself into a box and have one label and one thing and one niche in order to be a successful creative entrepreneur. Celina is the perfect example of a multi-passionate entrepreneur whose path goes all over the place, and she's just followed the things that have caught her interest and her attention, and it has led her to where she is now. And she is a walking example of her concept and her belief, which is process over product. And I think that really comes through in her own life story when you realize that it wasn't, or it never was, it never has been about the product and who she is and what she does. It's always been about the process. And just to remember that where you are now isn't necessarily where you're going to be, and where you were isn't where you're going to be, but they're all important steps on that twisty little path that's gonna lead you from A to Z. The conversation that we have, you'll hear her talk about how, she kind of dabbled in art and then stepped back and she took a path that she felt was more safe, but she always kept her hand in the creative soup. I don't know, you wanna call it creative soup? And what I hope this conversation will do for you is shine a light on a path that you can take that will help you create your limitless path to self-expression creatively. All right, have a listen and I'll be back at the end. Can you give us just an overview of your story? Like
Sure.
how you came to, what's your origin story? How you came to be as an artist or where you are in your life now?
Right. Well, that also has been,
Yeah.
you start here, there's a whole bunch of scrambling and you're here or you're somewhere
Yes.
at
It's
scramble,
never linear. Life.
right? I don't know what the end will be. I'm in that middle right now. I think I strongly believe that people are creative, that everyone is creative. Like as kids, we're all pretty much creative, and there's creativity in everything that we do, even in whether it be parenting, cooking, playing sports. I really think that creativity is problem solving, basically. Like whenever we need to come up with a solution, we need to be creative, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, my creativity, as a kid, I was very creative. I started off as a dancer. I danced my whole youth.
What type of dance did you do?
So I started off with ballet. I think like a lot of kids my age, that's what you did, ballet. So I did ballet till I was about 13 years old. And then at the age of 13, I switched schools because ballet was, there was no way I was going to be a ballerina. I'm 5'9", and I think that the teachers sort of saw that. And back in the day, there were very strict rules about what a ballerina could look like, and I didn't fit that mold. So I never got pushed to go to the auditions or to the special schools and everything. But I was the kid they would bring with them I used to go to schools in front of like hundreds of kids and dance to promote dance and promote the school I was with. So it was funny because I was the one going to these places, but they weren't pushing me to go to audition and everything. And I've kind of at 13 figured out what was going on a little bit. And so I left ballet and I went into, I did jazz, tap, modern. I used to dance 8 to 10 hours a week. It was my passion. I was going to become a choreographer. I was going to
Oh
move to
yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was at 13. But by the age of 14, I think I decided that for some reason, I thought artists were all struggling and that there was no future.
Yeah, I think a lot of
Because
people could identify with that story, right? We
right?
kind of
Well,
think
my
that.
father was a musician and I saw how he struggled and I wanted to be nothing like him, basically.
Right.
That's really the real story behind that. And so I decided that I would study. I was not a good student until I was 14. I was like last of the class. I was really good at art and drawing and all that. That I always got the good grades. But
Hmm.
at the age of 14, I'm like, you know what? I I'm gonna study science, all sciences. I'm gonna get good grades. And the way I saw things is that if I study sciences and one day I want to go back to dancing or arts or whatever, it will be a lot easier for me to do that. This was me at 14 thinking
Right.
this. That if I do arts and I want to become a scientist, then learning all of that to me sounded much harder to go
Yeah.
the other way than the other way down. So I studied sciences, but throughout, like I still kept dancing all through high school. I kept dancing even, up until university. When I got to university, that's where I stopped. But
Hmm.
I also took sewing classes when I was 13 and I started sewing and I used to make everyone gifts. And so I've always had that create like even though I didn't want to become an artist or someone creative or I didn't think that that was what my job would be, I still kept doing it on the side. It's always been there, always been in me. Like I learned
Wow.
how to knit, I learned how to like I've always been doing things with my hands. And
It's
so I
interesting you went into science because that's like a complete opposite from that's as far, you said you didn't want to be like your dad. I feel like that's as far away from music as you could have got. Do
yeah,
you think if your dad hadn't been a musician, you might have stuck with the arts? Was that a big part of,
I think so.
I'm going to be something different? And that can be like just, adolescent
Rebellious.
rebellion. We don't want to be like our parents,
Yeah, but
even
I
though
mean,
we are like them.
for
Um,
sure. No, I saw my dad really suffer. And to me, I didn't want to suffer. I wanted to
right.
make money. I wanted to travel. I wanted to buy nice things. But I got to university. And in my last year of university, while I was in university, it took me 4 years. It's usually 3 years to do here in Montreal, a bachelor's of science. But
Yeah.
it took me 4 years because I was working 2 and 3 jobs
Wow.
at the same time. So my last my last year of university, I had a light course. I had only I think 2 classes instead of 5, and I used to work as a bank teller, and I was in charge of buying the birthday gifts. And so
Yes.
usually I always made a little something for everyone, or I would also get like really creative in the whatever gifts I was buying. So you see, there's even creativity in that.
Wow.
And they're like, "What are you doing in psychology? You're
Oh,
such a creative person." And so I decided to take night classes, and I took night classes in fashion design. Um, and I loved it. I loved it. I had been sewing since I was 13, and I learned how to really like sew properly. I learned how to make my own patterns. And instead of doing a master's, I went back and did a technical degree, here we call them, like, it's a certificate, but it's like you
mm-hmm.
go back um, to Cégep. We have between high school and university, we have a 2-year program that's called Cégep. It's the only place in the world in Quebec that
Yeah.
does this. But a lot of technical degrees, like if you want to become an electrician or a plumber or whatever, I think that that's where you go and you go back to. So I went back and did a fashion design degree, and then I went into fashion design and I worked as a fashion designer. I've had my own label, children's label, where I used to recycle clothing and make new ones. So yeah, so I did that. Then I got fired from my job
Which
because
job? The
my
bank one
fashion
or
design job
which one?
as a fashion designer.
Oh, you got fired. What did you
It
do?
was office politics, but anyways, then I got hired by my boss that fired me as a fashion designer to plan his wedding, and I can't even tell you the wedding that it was. It was like we made all the waitresses their outfits, and it was like a 70s airplane, a
Oh my
theme.
God.
So I made the dresses. I had them made in China. We redid like it was crazy. There were people in plexiglass boxes just hanging out. There was a circus. Um, Anyways, absolutely crazy. So I wasn't. He fired me and then hired me as his wedding planner, which was absolutely crazy. And when he fired me, I went back to school and I did a certificate in graphic design because I wanted to. So I went into graphic design.
Yeah.
And then I did a bit of graphic design. I worked in that. And then, so I kept, this is me, evolving this way. And at one point, I started blogging.
Hmm.
And I started blogging about children's design because I was very much I loved everything that had to do with kids design, clothing, furniture, and all that. And I started a blog that was called Petit à Petit and Family. And through blogging, I learned a lot about social media, and
Hmm.
I started my Instagram and Pinterest, and then as I was blogging, I started making clothes. Then my kids were born, and I started making clothing for them, and that's where I got into photography. So it's like
Yeah.
there's a
Evolution of.
yeah, and to this whole madness, right? And so through blogging, I really wanted to get better at photography, and that's yeah, after a few years of trying to teach myself through like blogs, through books, I was having a really hard time, and then I took an online class, and I learned how to switch my camera from auto to manual. And from there, I took tons and tons of classes, and I've been now for 10 years basically taking pictures every day. And I got to be with Pinterest. I have a lot of followers. I'm considered a Pinterest influencer, and through that, I got some really amazing jobs. I worked for eBay. I did some work with J. Crew, um, and so I just that just brought me into this whole world of social media and photography, and this is where I'm at now. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
been
the work you got through Pinterest, was that photographic work for J. Crew and eBay?
no, so it was more of creative, like artistic direction. Or for
Cool.
eBay, I had to put together collections of items that I thought it's like trend forecasting. I had to
Oh,
go
cool.
get things on eBay and create mood boards with all these things, and like write articles about, whatever,
Yeah.
different things.
That's
So I
so
did,
interesting because that's like a
yeah,
job you wouldn't think exists, right? Like you would never say like when I grow up I'm going to make mood boards for eBay. But
exactly.
it's so interesting because you don't know where it's going to lead you. You don't know where your creativity is going to lead you. You don't know where your work's going to lead you, but it doesn't surprise me or shock me when you say like when you were starting out that you're like I got to learn science. That's going to be easier. Like I'm going to get my safety net, right? I'm going to get my job. I did the same thing. I went to school for psychology and
Yeah.
I had arts kind of trailing me through most of my life, and it was like I would almost take a class and then I would switch, and then I almost took photography in university and then I dropped it. And I went into psychology and primary school education because I thought like, well, I like arts and crafts. So if I work with little kids, I'll be able to make things every day, which
Yeah,
is like a terrible reason to become a kindergarten teacher because there's so much more to it than arts and crafts. But it doesn't surprise me. It's like, but we didn't know. We don't know, especially back then, like before the internet was really huge and social media like was not a thing. We just that vision of that starving artist was such a like a
yeah,
cautionary tale burned into
yeah.
all of our brains, I find.
Right. Like a
It's interesting.
dancer, you would, I don't know that anyone, you went into dance because you were passionate and you loved it, but you never would go into it thinking it would, and I, I have to say that I also tell my children, like my son is very much into music, and I'm like, that's fine. You want to become a music producer. You know, he has like these dreams of becoming this huge superstar, but he also does have to realize that it is hard to get there. Like, I mean, and so I always tell him you need a plan B, and his plan B is to be like, he wants to just put the groceries in the bags for people, you know, like
Yeah,
the bag
bagger.
or whatever they're called. And I'm like, no, that's not a plan B. That's like, you
It's like
know,
Plan Z.
yeah, that's like your last resort. Like
Yeah.
when all the plans didn't. So I do try to teach my children, like if my daughter wants to become an actor, I'm like, yeah, for sure, that's amazing. But you do need to fall back on something. And a lot of the times what I tell them to do is like, you want to be your own boss and you want to go to business school, do
Yeah.
this. I wish I hadn't done
Why?
science. I do wish I had gone to art school because I would have loved to have learned, you know, everything that I'm learning on my own now, like
Mm-hmm.
art history or like just, I'm a creative person, but I don't paint or I don't sculpt. And maybe that's something that I would have loved to have explored, which doesn't mean I won't. Like,
Right.
I'm always thinking about, oh, what can I do next? Or I'm always looking for that next project, and that's always in the back of my mind, you know. Or even so, I tell my children like, yeah, it's great that you have this plan of becoming this musician or an artist or whatever, but always, you know, try and find what are you not very good at, and then maybe do that. So that, especially for me, the business, I'm so bad at business. I wish I had gone into that because I
Yeah.
think a lot of artists probably struggle also with that part
Mm-hmm.
of, you know, not all of them. Some are amazing at for
Yeah.
sure at business, but that is definitely what I should have gone into and
I
studied.
know. I always think that. I'm like, if you do train formally as an artist, they should make business school prerequisite because you're going, most likely, if you're in an arts career, you're going to be an entrepreneur. And even just the way like society's shifting, it's really moving towards like a gig economy, they say, where people do little gigs. It's not
Right,
so much that people get a job, stay there for 60 years and get the watch, you know?
right.
So it's like that transferable skills that are going to help you with your creativity and to be able to be successful.
Yeah.
Um, how do
And
you
I also,
identify? Like, do you identify as a photographer? You've done so much. You're saying like, if someone said to you, like, what's your artistic identity? What would you say?
well, it's funny because my kids don't really, when they ask, well, what does your mom do? They never know what to say, right? Because oh, she's
Yes.
a photographer
They're like,
teacher.
what is she doing today? Okay, what's she doing
Yeah.
today? That's what I'll say.
I think now I'm starting. Well, I have a full time job now. I went back. I've been working for 6 months for a company, and I'm the marketing director for social media and artistic director. So that's what I am right now. So
Yeah.
right, and I do teach photography classes on online. So and I do take photography clients. I do a little bit of commercial and different things like that for
Hmm.
people that, you know, I really want to work with. So I think that that's pretty much where I'm at right now. If you ask me what I want to be, maybe I think that the artistic art direction is probably what I think I'm the best at.
Yeah.
I
Like
mean,
visual stuff.
right now this is, yeah, I see, like, I'd love to just keep going in that vein because I think it ties in everything that I've ever done together,
Yeah.
and I put it in a one package, and that for me is my what I like to do best. and I think what I'm the best at too, because
Yeah.
it's hard to know. I think I've for the last 10 years I've or 20 years even. I'm old, so I can say that for the last 20 years. I've been trying to find myself. Am I, am I a fashion designer? Am I a graphic designer? Am I a photographer? Am I like where do I excel? And maybe I don't. I'm good a little bit at everything, and that's what makes me who I am. But I think that the artistic direction is really, I feel, is my strongest. My what I'm best at, but who knows? Maybe that'll change in 5 years.
Yeah, well,
But
that's what you're doing
never,
right now, and it will change. I would assume
yeah,
it changes, right? If you listen to your story of where you started and where you
yeah,
are, and also I just think it would be boring if we stayed the same, right? Our whole life.
right, yeah.
Um,
What I do love about photography, though, is how we can evolve, and always
mhm,
how it's always there's always something to learn, or a different way of seeing, of doing, of experimenting, of playing. That's why I think I photography is probably one of the things now that I've stuck to the longest in a way. I mean,
mhm,
fashion design I've done for a long time, and that's tied in with graphic design. But I think photography seems to really be the one now that I've really stuck to for a long, long time. And because I think of the fact that I'm not, I mean, I guess you can evolve with fashion design too, but it's not, for me, it hasn't been the same. Whereas photography has really kept me on my toes and
mhm.
really has made me, and my brain needs that, right? It needs the constant
Yeah, it's the
motivation.
dopamine.
And
We need the dopamine hit of like learning
yeah,
new stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Like
I was
when,
gonna say that. Do you find photography is the part that keeps you more challenged? Like there's always more to learn, whereas the other, mediums, fashion, are more like you learn it, you get good at it, but that's kind of the end for you. Or maybe photography is a little more infinite.
yeah, I mean, fashion design can be too, right? There's always evolving trends or things, or you can learn different techniques on how to do certain things. But for me, photography has given me like you said, that dopamine. Every time I pick up my camera, it's almost like a new experience for me,
Yeah.
anyways. It's like you just, there's changing okay, for with fashion, maybe there's changing fabrics and this and that, but you're also you're somewhat limited at one point
Hmm.
with fashion. With graphic design, I think maybe I'm not good enough to be able to go and dig deeper. I'm not very good at necessarily at drawing or things like that. That's really, so I think that I hit a limit with graphic design probably, but with photography, I'm finding myself always learning. And I find, even, I do commercial product shots, and or even a family session or something, there's always going to be a challenge or something new that's just, and that I'm going to have to deal with, and that
Hmm.
I love the, for some reason, I do so much better when I'm a little bit stressed, or when I'm
Yeah.
it really gets me, like, again, it's that problem solving, and I love that. That
Yeah.
motivates me to keep going and keep doing, and I think that that little bit added stress, you never know what the weather will be like, or
Yeah.
what, the type of light you'll have, or something. It's like, or even who's in front of you is always a challenge, because
Yeah.
they all have different personalities. They have, so it's interesting to me, even to know who's in front of you, or what the product is in front of you, right? So in my new
Yeah.
job, I'm learning all about jewelry and engagement rings, and that whole aspect. And it's a whole different world of how to photograph things, because
Right.
first of all, I'm shooting macro. Second of all, I'm like, it's shiny surfaces. It's like, so there's
Right.
all these added little challenges that make it really interesting too.
Yeah.
So
It's very nuanced, right? And there's a little bit of unpredictability with it always. Like
yeah,
you can control a lot in
yes,
photography. Like you can control your lighting and all this, but there's always something that you can't control, right? So
hmm,
there is that need to be in the moment and
yeah,
to be problem solving, like you're saying, and being like, okay, the person in front of me, maybe they didn't sleep last night, or they're in a bad mood, or now the sun is changing, or whatever. And even if you're photographic style is quite controlled and whatnot, like I said, there's going to be that element that you're not prepared for, right? And you
Yeah.
have to think on your feet. And I think that's like from what you're saying, like where you're saying it's like the thing that stayed with you the longest, it's probably because it's that potential for like limitless learning, right? And
Yeah.
limitless, yeah, like you're never going to hit that upper limit, I don't think.
No, I don't. And that, is that a good thing or a bad thing that we were just, are we never satisfied too? You know, that's me anyways. I'm never, you're always trying, I'm always trying to get better and better and better and improve on every time, and in every situation that I
Hmm.
take photos of, right? So
Yeah.
that's maybe also, I guess, depending on personalities. I know a lot of photographers do have that, they have their formula in a way and they're happy, and actually they get bored of it, and then they, that's when they're like, oh, I'm in a creative rut, or I'm, because maybe they need to challenge themselves,
Yeah.
right? I like to go and have a list of little things that I'm going to do at the end of the session that's going to be different or fun or challenging for me, and then that makes it exciting every time.
Hmm.
So yeah, so
That
maybe.
was how I found you. Literally, that was how I found you. I had done a lot of very repetitive food and product work, and it was
Right.
like set the lighting up, set the boards up, set snap, edit over and over again. And I was like, this is like something is not jiving with me here. And it was that I lost that element of play, right?
Yeah.
And losing that problem solving. There was a bit of problem solving, but once you've problem solved like how to set your, your strobe up to this and that, it's like the numbers and the ratios in your head, so that novelty is a little bit gone. And I
Yeah.
remember you saying that, like how you always saved a few shots at the end of a gig to do
Yeah.
something that was like your own style. And like for me, I was like, I've never thought about that. I've always just been like, I have to do the brief or I have to do what the
Right.
client says, but there's always that wiggle room, right, to express yourself as an artist. um, do you feel it's we lose that ourselves, like our identity as an artist, when we do work for others?
I do think that, like, I our brain is so. I also studied psychology, but I did a bachelor's of science in psychology. So I took all the science classes like organic chemistry and whatever. Anyways, instead of going on with the social aspect of psychology, I wanted to study the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And lately, what I've been doing is what I'd love to do is go back to school maybe one day and do a master's where I take creativity. I want to study creativity and how the brain, functions. And so I think a lot of, because you took my at play class,
Yeah.
I think a lot of what I talk about there is that how our brain is lazy, and humans in general, we're kind of lazy. We
Yeah.
fall into that routine, and even if it's not, like talking about creativity, but even the everyday, right? We go to work, we come home, and if you have kids, we make sure they're doing their homework, we do dinner, we do the bed night routine, we go to bed, we wake up, and it's like this routine, and the brain loves that. But the brain needs to be challenged, and it's a hard work to get out of,
Mm-hmm.
to break that routine, because
Yeah.
our brain just wants the easy way, right? We only use 10% or whatever the saying is of our brains. Imagine if we used more. So yeah, exactly. So if you're not confronted with having to solve a problem, and we have to solve problems every day, like I said, in parenting,
Mm-hmm.
in, oh, I didn't do groceries, what's in my fridge, what am I going to make to eat, right? That's problem solving. Or
Mm-hmm.
something happens, we are always using our creativity in a way. But if we're talking about being creative, like with photography or in the arts or whatever, and if we fall into that routine, what happens is that it gets repetitive,
Mm-hmm.
and then we lose that spark, or we lose that, and we get bored, and that's when we fall into that, what we all call the creative rut, right? Oh, I don't feel
Mm.
like. So how do you challenge that? Well, you need to find ways to make your brain break that routine, right? So a good way, like let's say you are a working photographer and you're doing these gigs, and yeah, you're doing family shoots every day, or you're shooting food every day, and you have your setup and you know what you're doing. Well, how can you challenge yourself? Okay, well, so you start. I say, yeah, play or add
Constraints, yeah.
constraints, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, okay, I'm only shooting at 1/50 seconds shutter speed all week. That becomes a little, without a tripod, because that would be cheating, I think. Especially with food, you're kind of shooting at, so, or even that, you like, okay, I'm going to shoot long exposures, or I'm going to, and you put these sort of constraints on yourself, and you're going to have to problem solve, because you're going to want to get a good shot, or a shot that's somewhat decent, with whatever constraints you're putting on yourself. And that's just going to push your brain a little bit. It's going to make you think outside the box. And that's where the creativity is gonna, and that's where you're gonna get that feeling again, right? That energy, like, ooh, and then that's when you get into a creative flow, or that you get into this creative where you start. So you also might be starting off somewhere at 1/50 because that's the constraint you put on yourself, but you might end up in a completely different place by the end of that 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be long, 30 minutes, because I know we're all, strapped for time as well. But by challenging yourself and your brain, then there's something that happens. But doing that routine just kind of, and then we kind of get uninterested. And
We
it's
do.
not,
We like routines, right? Like you said,
yeah,
brains are lazy. We like efficiency, right? We don't, the brain's role is to keep your body alive, right? So they do
right.
that by conserving calories, and we conserve calories and energy by conserving thinking and decision making. And so
Yeah,
you almost have to hack your brain out of it. But I feel like you can take that brain's desire for routine and predictability to force a creative routine, almost like you're saying, like, okay, 10 minutes a day, and this is my constraint. I'm going to do it every day at this time, right? And so giving
yeah,
your brain what you need, but also giving yourself room to play. It's important to remember that you can't predict where your path is going. And just because you went somewhere in the past doesn't mean you're destined or doomed to something else, right? That you just kind of have to ride the waves, and you have to kind of go with it and not beat yourself up if you have to take a job or you have to go work at a bank and something for a bit, right? Everybody's path is going to look different. And even if you find yourself in like a not ideal scenario, there's still a way to find space for creative expression. Now, this conversation was super long. I talked to Celina for 90 minutes, and we talk about creative burnout. We talk about how to navigate the creative cycle. We talk about boundaries between client expectations and self. And like what I'm trying to say here is there's so much in this conversation with her. So if you're liking what you're hearing and you want more conversations that are going to help you create change in your life and build a creative life that you are proud of and like super jazzed up about, make sure you hit subscribe so you get every single video. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
I can taste your words. I can taste